Mighty Soul. Today I wanted to sit down and film a video talking to you about how I journal. As you had seen previously before, I went to Shinola down in Detroit and picked up my new journal for the year. I absolutely love the color and I really enjoy the personalization. I actually added a heart this year. My previous one from last year is blue, looks like this and just has my name on it. But yeah, that was the whole process. I hope it kind of, urged you to pick out a journal, and if you would like to check out the one from Shinola, that's great, but just in general to inspire you to pick one up. And to now get into what the main gist of the video is, I had asked you guys over my Instagram. Here's my Instagram if you are interested. There's hair on me. If you had any questions regarding journaling in general, whether you want to know how to stay motivated, what I do for journaling, different styles, etc. And so I'm pretty active on there. I try and engage with you guys and figure out what kind of videos you like to see. So if you're interested, here's my Instagram and you can check it out. So hopefully this video will answer the questions that I have. I will be asking and answering the questions directly. I wrote them down on a piece of paper, and yeah, so let's just get into it. I figured the best way to talk about how I journal is by showing you, and so yeah, let's just get into the nitty-gritty. I'm not gonna actually physically show you what I write because it's quite personal, but just to begin with, let's hunker down and talk about the basics. Number one, journaling is hard. In the beginning, I started probably around 2017, 2018-ish. And it was a difficult process. I feel like a lot of people, when they first begin journaling, they feel the same way. It's almost like exercise. You just have to be consistent with it and stick with it, and then you'll eventually see results both, physically and mentally in your life. So for myself, I began by just picking up a random notebook, a spiral notebook, and just dumping everything I had to say on that piece of paper. I had no rhyme or reason. I just, whatever I was feeling in that moment, I wrote down on that piece of paper. And for a while it worked, but not really, because I lacked consistency. I was never motivated to do it because the only time that I would do it was when I felt that way. Usually it was when I felt sad, angry, annoyed, irritated, like any negative emotion I felt was usually the time that I would sit down and just spill everything that I had to say, which when I would go back and reflect on those journal entries, they were never, positive, anything that I wanted to, read about or that I could grow from or reflect on. So last year, I was sitting down on YouTube just watching one of my favorite YouTubers. Her name's Jen. This is her at right here. And she was talking about how she started up this new style of journaling. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to try that, because pretty much up until, a year ago, that's how I tried to journal. I would try and, do like mood trackers almost, try and write things down that were a little bit more positive, but I always catch myself going back to just writing down negative thoughts. And so when I heard about what she was doing, I was really interested and thought, you know what, why don't I try this? So ever since I started that a year ago, I've stuck with it and I've journaled pretty much every single day since using that style. So I want to get in and share that style, but just to let you know, it's not my questions that I answer, it's not my prompts. They're credited to Jen, who I believe found them from someone else, but they really work for me. And personally, I see a lot more growth, positivity, and I see a lot of what I write down in my life, if that makes sense. So let me just give you what you came looking for. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I obviously write down the date, and I like to personally write down the time, whether it be morning or evening. I prefer to do it in the morning just because the questions are kind of prompting you to act upon what you are writing on. So preferably for me, I like to do it in the morning, but it's just honestly up to you. So the first question that I answer, or the first prompt that I go about, is writing down my affirmation. And it's personal, obviously, this whole thing is personal, but for myself, I just like to write down the same daily affirmation every single day, so that way it's consistent. I'm constantly reminding myself of it. So I'll just share what mine is, because maybe you're kind of stuck and you're like, what does that even mean? And for me, I just like to write down, I am okay. And that can mean a lot of things, especially in the moment. for a while there, it was just literally like, I am okay, take a deep breather, things are fine, the sun will rise again, and you'll just have a whole new day. Depending on what kind of mood I'm in, sad, happy, mad, angry, whatever, it works. So I like to start off by just writing down what my daily affirmation is, and if I prefer, I can write a little bit here and there after, but it's usually pretty concise. The second thing that I answer is, or fill in the blank to, is today I will focus on shifting my pattern of, and then whatever you want it to be. Some days it would be like a physical thing that I'm doing. For me, sometimes I want to focus my or changing my pattern of eating, because sometimes I'm an emotional eater, so when I'm super stressed I will just eat a lot of sweets, a lot of carbs. So sometimes I physically want to do something, and other times it's something that I mentally want to work on, where I want to shift the pattern of how I communicate with my sibling, or how I don't know, just trying to give you ideas to what you could write down as well, but showing you that it can be something both physical and mental. The third thing that I answer is I am grateful for, and then you just fill in the blank. It's pretty self-explanatory, but especially during this time, it's really important to just, sit back and realize that though there may be things that are going on in the world that we can't control, we can realize that there are positives still around us. So really been honing in on that one, and I've been going pretty in depth with that one, just because it's such a weird time in this world. I do not enjoy being at home when I would rather be at school learning. Who would have thought that I would have wanted to be at school? But it's just important to be grateful and give our gratitude. The fourth thing that I like to answer is 3 traits my future self will have. I just write 1, 2, 3 and what the trait is, and then I also like to write down a little bit, like a blurb, of how I'm going to work on that specific trait on that day, or what I've done in the week that has shown that characteristic that I'm trying to include in my persona, if that makes sense. The fifth thing that I like to write about is I will experience more blank. And for me, I just wrote in this one, for example, I will experience more peace and overall happiness because I am working on me. Especially during this time, we have a lot of time to reflect, work on ourselves. And so what I like about this style of journaling is that it's not just something where you just, write down a bunch of nonsense almost and then walk away and never have anything to do with it again. This one is just really almost like, I don't want to call it self-care, but it kind of is. But it's just working on you. Physically writing down what you're going to do is proven to help you actually do it, stay motivated to do it, and actually do the thing that you're trying to work on. So for me, those characteristics of having grit, being able to forgive, truly forgive, is something that I need to work on. Having patience, not only with myself and others, and for instance, having faith in relationships, friends, family, whatever, or between myself and God. But that's why I like the style of journaling, is just because it's something that can be taken even when you're done writing on paper. The sixth thing that I answer is I have the opportunity to be my future self when and then you just fill in the blank from there. Depending on what it is, if it's physical or mental that I want to work on that day, I write down what I'm going to do, so that way, it prompts me right after I go, or after I'm done writing, to go do that thing that I said I was going to work on. And then the seventh thing, this is optional. All of these are obviously optional, but specifically this one is optional because I know not everybody is very religious, but for myself, I have this app on my phone. It's called Daily Verse, I believe. I've used it for so long, I should probably know the name, but I believe it's called Daily Verse. You can purchase the app and it gives you prompts, and it gives you devotionals each day, but for myself, I just keep the free app, and that one just gives you a daily verse every single day. I write down the daily verse, and then I reflect on it, interpret it to what I think it means, and how I can input what I have learned from that verse into whatever I'm doing that day. Now that I have mentioned, kind of style, walked you through what the prompts are, I wanted to sit down and answer the questions that you guys had asked me on my Instagram. And again, thank you for everyone who replied and engaged with me on my Instagram story. It really means a lot to me, because otherwise it would just be me asking questions to myself. So the first question I had was, how did you get started? I had a few other variations of that kind of question, but for me, it was just in my junior year of high school, I believe. I was really emotionally and physically, like my appearance, I was very insecure with my body weight, with my, acne, just being me was not comfortable at the time. But I remember thinking to myself, you know, it's probably annoying to hear me vent and complain all the time about these things, so who better to vent to than myself? And that's why I started just picking up a journal and just dumping information on there. So that's how I got into that style of journaling. I'm happy that happened because now I have a better, more efficient way of journaling, but that is how I got into it. It wasn't like I went on YouTube and whatever. It was just, I knew that people around me were probably like, oh my god. So I just vented to myself for a while. The second question that I got was, how do you figure out what to write down? So as I mentioned before, when I first began, I just would spew negative thoughts onto a piece of paper, no rhyme or reason. It was just like how I felt, and then I left it. I moved on from that probably like a couple months later, and I figured out a better way to cope with and understand why I was feeling the way I was. And I still do journal in the way that I'm about to tell you, just not as frequently. I usually do that, or this style of journaling, when hits the fan. So I would first write down how I'm feeling, why I'm feeling that way, and then what I can do in that moment to make me feel better, and what literally I want to happen to make me feel better. That way it's still, you know, a place for me to like vent all my emotions out and get it off my chest, but also a way for me to reflect on why I'm feeling that way and to fix my emotion and to help me feel better. So that's the second type of style that I like to do, but mainly the how I figured out what I wanted to write down was just by following those 7 questions. So the third question that I got is, how do you keep up / how do you stay motivated? For myself, I just truly enjoy the 10 to 15 minutes to myself to be with me and my thoughts. Some days, honestly, it takes me 5 minutes because I'm like, you know what? I don't have a lot to say about this. This is how I feel, whatever. Other days, I might sit there for a good 30 minutes and just explain each point pretty in depth. I try not to, you know, restrain myself into a time lot of how long I have to do it, or restrain myself into you have to do it, because when I'm told that I have to do something, eventually I'm gonna be like, I don't want to do it. So if there's a day that I don't want to do it, then I don't. But if there's, you know, a time where I want to spew all my emotions out, whatever, then I will. I think it's just because I've made it a space where it's very personal. I've seen, you know, growth both mentally and physically, that it makes me want to keep doing it. Another question I got was what pen I used. I kind of chuckled when I saw this because the pen I use is this one. It comes in a huge pack. It's the Big Soft Feel Med. Looks like this. I, for whatever reason, only use this pen. When I go back and look at my entries, this is the only one that I like to use. I like the way that it feels specifically on this piece of paper. It's weird, but I think my handwriting looks the nicest with it, and so it's also pleasing to look at. But I also like to highlight certain things in my journal sometimes, or like underline the day, or if I'm really, you know, wanting to make it look cute, which often I don't, I'll use these. I'm sure many of you have heard of them. This is the, I'm not even gonna say it, but this is the one highlighter that I have that I like. And then these are the other two. These are the mild liner pen or highlighters / pen type things. So they have a pen on this side, and then they have the highlighter on this side. I like them because they're pastel. I think they're cute. This one's just their purple one. I don't think it has a name or anything. Oh, this is the violet one, and this is their blue one. Wow, good names. But yeah, I just like to use these every once in a great while if I want to zhuzh it up. But honestly, the main thing that I like to use is just this pen by Bic. The fifth thing, the last thing, my favorite type of style, prompts. What do I like to do? Brain dump, let yourself, etc. I answered this one in kind of the video. The style of journaling that I prefer to do is just answering those 7 prompts, and then if I'm feeling a really intense emotion, I will go and assess my mood, why I'm feeling that way, what I want to actually happen, and what I can do in that moment to fix it. So really I do 2 different styles of journaling. I just think it's a good structure for myself and it's enjoyable to actually read back on. Okay, so hopefully that answered all your guys' questions. If you do have any other questions that you didn't have answered in this video, go ahead and leave them in the description bar below and I will try my best to answer them. Again, I want to point out that journaling is very personal, it's subjective, so what works for me might not work for you, which is unfortunately the sucky part. You know, if everything worked for everybody, life would be a lot easier, but I hope at least that you took away some prompts that you could use if you're already journaling. It gave you some inspiration. If you're a beginner, hopefully this inspires you and gives you some motivation to, you know, get on your roll. But as far as anything else I have to say, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.